Good morning to all viewers and listeners. This is joemol, and I am happy for the interview regarding our plans and programs in the City Council. Since I've seen the need to have more conversation with our people regarding major issues, and I started with two privileged speeches already. My first privileged speech was focused on the problems of the Baguio indigenous peoples regarding their ancestral domain, starting with an apology and starting to find means and ways to do justice to the Aboriginal people who are the original inhabitants. And I pointed out the fact that Baguio City is the ancestral domain of the Ibalois and the Kalanguyas, who were here ahead even before the Spaniards came. And with the landmark case of Mateo Carino being required to register his lands and having to go to the United States Supreme Court and have a decision that recognized native titles, which says that these lands had been in the possession of the indigenous peoples for a long time, since time immemorial, and therefore these are to be privately owned by them, and that when the government asked them to have it to be registered, they should not have been required to do a lot of things. So, for example, the case of Carino, he lost in the Regional Trial Court, or CFI of Baguio, and then he lost before the Supreme Court of the Philippines. But the Supreme Court of the United States said that do not expect paper titles from people who do not use paper titles as proof of ownership, but by their long possession. They've been there even before the Spaniards. They've been hostile to foreigners, and therefore their lands are privately owned. But in Baguio City, when the Americans came and they chartered the city of Baguio, they declared that all lands belong to the city. That's why the city is selling it, considering the indigenous peoples to be squatters of their own land. So that is the greatest injustice that happened. Now, in order to rectify that, to do justice, I thought that we should start the conversation by asking the city government to make an official apology, and I hope that our mayor will soon heed to that call. He also asked the congressman to do the same in Congress. So, with that, I also look at the city charter. Well, that for me, and the fact that it does not recognize ancestral lands, ancestral domains in Baguio City, is one of the reasons why the indigenous peoples are having difficulty here in Baguio, whereas they used to be the owners of the lands that they've been occupying. The requirement that in all policy-making body, just like the City Council, there has to be an IPMR, or Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representative, which unfortunately for the past 3 or 4 elections, no one was qualified to sit. But this time we look forward to having one, because they followed the selection process that they're provided. And Mr. Edwin Bugnay Hilario was chosen. We hope that in 1 or 2 months he will be seated as a city councilor, and that is one progress. So we also had the creation of a working group to discuss the provisions of the revised city charter. Actually, there will be 6 issues. One is the ancestral domain and indigenous peoples, the BCDA, and also technical glitches, and we hope that it will be participated in by all stakeholders, especially the barangays that are being affected, and also the academia, and also other interest groups. These national and local issues, as far as legislation is concerned, should be made known to the people, and the people, our constituents, should be able to have a voice before we act, before we approve, before we endorse. And that is the essence of legislation. Laws should be made by the people who's going to be affected. We are empowering them by letting them participate in the, as I said, conversation, a dialogue, a debate without necessarily quarreling about it. But at least if everyone from the young to the old is aware of what's happening, their voices will be heard. And that is the essence of legislation.